Welcome everybody to the Single and Stilettos show. Today we have as our guest Marni Kinrys. She is a wing girl and she is the founder of Wing Girl Method, and I'm so excited to have her on the show today. She's actually been a speaker at my Single and Stilettos events and she's amazing. She's worked with tens of thousands of single men, and so that's why I wanted to have her on the show, is because ladies, she's really going to give you the secrets on how you can improve your chances of meeting Mr. Right, because let me tell you, the men tell her everything. So welcome, Marni, to the show. It's so great to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. When you wrote to me and said you wanted to do this, I was like, obviously I'm going to have a phone call with you. I love talking to you.
I know. You're so great. Even though we live on opposite coasts,
I know, but I feel like I know you very well.
I know.
Which I kind of do. We've known each other for a while now, so it's great.
I know, and it's kind of funny because we met over Twitter. People say you can't meet people over Twitter. I met you over Twitter.
All of the people that I'm strongly associated with in my work, I have met over Twitter. It's very strange. So Twitter, great resource.
It is. It really is. So I'm so glad you could join us today. And before we get into all the secrets that you're going to tell us, why don't you tell us really quickly how you got to be a wing girl? Because you don't go to college for that and you don't plan out your life to be a wing girl. So how did you become one?
Well, I started my business the way that everybody else does. I was drunk and I was at a singles mixer and I made a joke that stuck. Like literally, I went to a space where people were supposed to be mixing. They weren't mixing. I grabbed men. I made them pick up women. I gave them feedback on it and I loved it. And at the end of the night, I posted an ad on Craigslist to be a wing girl, again, as a joke because I was a little tipsy. And I had 75 guys respond by the next morning. So I just started. And this was 10 years ago.
Oh, my
God. So since then, it's morphed and changed. And obviously, my knowledge has grown. And now I've interviewed close to 5,000 women as a collective to get my information from. But, yeah, I've been a wing girl for 10 years, which is crazy.
And for 10 years, I mean, I'm thinking back 10 years ago, no one even knew what that really was.
No.
So you're like an innovator.
Yeah, like I own the term wing girl, so it's mine, and I was the first person to ever use it. Now it's being used quite often. I've heard it on the Kardashian show, which I felt really good about. But yeah, nobody was doing this. So initially, it was me and two girls would go out with a guy and pick up women for him, and then I found that was a little dangerous and also not effective, because if you're a man who needs a woman to get women, you're not really a man. So what I did was take a step back, and now what I do is I provide advice, guidance, and teachings to men about how to become a man women want so that they can do everything for themselves. So they don't need a wing girl or me by their side. They can go approach any woman they want without fear of rejection and with extreme confidence.
So, like, what are your clients like? What age range, and are they all professional men, or do you have all different ranges of men?
Well, honestly, it is all over the place because my business is it's a blog for right now, and people can buy products online. So it's literally like 18-year-olds, because that's the minimum age that I'll allow, up to 75. But the majority of men that it's crazy. Like, I'll get a guy saying, I'm 75. Do these techniques work? And I'm like, yes, they do. And then some 18-year-old saying, there's this girl in my biochem class. How do I do X, Y, and Z? And I have to help each of them. And it's interesting, because the same things apply. Women definitely do change as they mature and grow up, but the things that they are attracted to stay very consistent. It just looks a little bit different based on a man's age. So the guys that I work with the most who, I come to my boot camps and buy my products, they are, very successful men. They're good quality men who just don't understand a couple of things about women. So once I help give them those tweaks, they end up being these men that women want, rather than these jerks that women are usually dating, or, complete wussies that women aren't attracted to.
Right. So, okay, that's great. So I love that you help these men in that way. But so now for single women, New York City, I don't know if you know this, New York City actually has more single women than single men. And women are always complaining to me. They're like, I can't meet a guy. I know. Is it like that in LA? Are there more single women in LA?
I think there's more single women everywhere. There's a lot of cities that I'm sure like their censuses say that there are more single men, but I know that in the larger cities there actually are more single women, in Chicago as well, right, New York and Los Angeles. It is funny because I get tons of guys who are like, I live in New York, there's nowhere to meet women. And I'm like, what? Like, are you serious? That always shocks me. So I think both sides have that fear, frustration, and possibly confusion. And so, when I work with people, I'm like, well, if you sit on your couch at home, you're not going to meet people. You do have to put yourself out there, especially if you're not of the schooling age. If you have your own life, if you have a group of friends, if you have a job that you go to for 8 to 12 hours a day, it does require work and effort to have a social life. So the guys, and the guys that I work with, and I'm going to advise the same things to women, is you have to delegate 1 day a week to do something that puts you in the position to meet men. And that doesn't mean going to a bar. It can mean that, but it means having a dinner party which is hard in New York, I know, having a dinner party at a restaurant where you invite your friends and their single friends to join you, going to a singles event. If it's on a Saturday, if you join a running club that's for singles, going on online dating. You have to delegate that time, because if you don't, you're going to find no time to meet other individuals.
I know. I completely agree. And I give that same advice to my female clients is you got to do more than just online dating and going out to bars, because those are only 2 ways to meet men. And I tell women that you have to look at it in terms of, I always find it interesting in New York City, women are so career oriented. And if they lost their job today, they would do everything to get a new job. They would go online, they would network, they would call headhunters, they would call their friends, family. And then when I always ask them, what else are you doing to meet a guy? They go, oh, online dating and bars. And I'm like, there's a little bit of a disconnect. You're only doing 2 things to meet a man. And a man, theoretically, should last longer than a job, theoretically.
Well, I hope so. Yeah. Well, the thing is that, like, men are everywhere. It's literally just opening your eyes and looking around, especially New York. And I know this is the thing that, like, most women are like, well, if I do all these things, aren't I desperate because I'm so focused on finding a man? No, if you do it the right way and you own the fact that you're like, I want to find a person, doesn't mean I want to find the first man that comes along, but I want to have options. It's however you look at it that it doesn't become desperate or needy or whatever other insecurities you have attached to. And same thing with, if you see a cute guy that's on the subway with you that you have like a 45-minute ride with, go position yourself near him and make yourself really feminine and say, hi, my name is, and then let him be the masculine leader after that. Because I will tell you that from the work that I've done with so many men, the biggest confusion and the biggest misconception they have is that women do not want to be approached. They don't want to be bothered. If they're in a group of friends talking, if they're by themselves with their earphones or they're reading a magazine, they do not want to be bothered, because they're the same as us. They want to protect their egos as well. They want like 100% sign that says, go and approach her, she's yours. And unfortunately, a lot of the really aggressive douchebags happen to, make their own rules where they're like, I can just approach anybody. When in fact, everybody should be following that rule. And you should let the other person tell you if they don't want to be approached at that time, rather than rejecting yourself. So for women, they are everywhere. And for men, men are everywhere as well, especially in New York City. I see people all the time, and sorry that I'm going on and on about this, but I'll go to Whole Foods every single day because it's across the street from my house, and I don't like to cook. So I have them cook for me, which is awesome. And I push myself to be open and approach people and start conversations and talk. And I am married, but I still want to open myself up to any opportunity that comes my way, whether it's for a new friend, a business call, whatever it is. And the only way that I can have people come into my life is if I'm open to it. So start opening your eyes, looking up and saying hi to people and smiling, not this.
I know, and New Yorkers are like that. They have this tunnel vision when they're going to work, and don't look at me, and if someone makes eye contact, they immediately look away like that. I always think it's funny because I'm originally from California, and so I know people are really friendly, but New York, it's just like, don't make eye contact.
Exactly, because they think that they're going to turn to stone or something. I don't know what the reason is, but I get it. You're busy and you want to get to where you're going, but when there's times you don't have to really be anywhere, then enjoy and actually like take people in. Because I will say one thing, people have warned me in the past about New Yorkers being assholes. I think they are the best people in the entire world and the most friendliest and helpful.
Yeah, it's just opening yourself up. I completely agree. So now let me ask you a question, because A lot of women will tell me they're really shy. So what advice would you give shy women on how they can open themselves up without putting themselves so out there that they feel uncomfortable?
Well, okay, so it's funny because a lot of people relate shyness to being introverted when in fact they're two completely different things. So being an introvert is, it just means that you get charged by being alone. That's how you recharge yourself. And that is something that is who you are. That's part of your personality. You can't really alter that. Being shy is something you can alter within yourself. You can work on becoming more outgoing. So as much as I would love people to rely on their shyness, like, oh, I'm a shy person, so they don't have to do anything, there are little steps so that you can become more outgoing. And there's little steps so it doesn't seem so scary. Right. So if you are shy, the first step for you is to approach 10 people every single day with a smile. That's like the easiest one to do to get over that shyness, because I used to be a really shy person, and now you've met me, I'm not shy at all. In my mind, I still am, but like I push myself every single day to break out of that shell. And I started off with, when I was in Australia, actually backpacking when I was younger, I said, I'm going to go out and I can't go home until I smile at 10 people. And that took me an hour and a half to do. That's a lot. And there was people all over the streets, and I was just like so nervous to do it. So I got over that hump. The next day I made a rule for myself to say hi to 10 people, and I couldn't go home. And I think it was the exact same amount of time. But I got over those humps slowly, and there's lots of other steps to take afterwards. But I would say if you can give yourself a little tiny challenge every single day that pushes you past your shyness, that will help you with your shyness. On the flip, yeah.
Oh, I completely agree. And, you know, people don't believe this about me either. I actually used to be super shy, too. I couldn't even look people in the eye. And whenever I tell people that, they're like, you used to be shy? And I'm like, yes, I used to be super shy. But I was like you. I challenged myself, and I said, I'm going to overcome my shyness. So you can do it, but it takes work.
But you'll even, hopefully you'll say this as well, like, you still have that shy girl inside of you, right? Like, you have those seconds where you're like, I don't want to do this, I don't want to talk to that person. But then you're like, of course I'm going to. And you push yourself.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, it's true. You always have that inner self of, oh my God, there's certain things that I don't want to do, but I force myself to because I have to keep challenging myself. So
For sure. So one thing with shyness with men, I will tell you that men are equally as nervous and shy and so afraid of rejection. Even like amazing quality men. It's that first 30 seconds of interaction that they're so freaked out over. So if you do notice a guy that you're interested in, you can smile at him. You could even tilt your head, and that's pretty bold to say to come over. Or you can position yourself near him, look over to your left or your right, wherever he is, and then just say hi. And say your name. And then, let him be shy as well, but let him then lead the conversation. And then hopefully together you'll get over that shyness.
I agree. So now let me ask you a question, because women ask me this all the time, because I do tell them they have to make eye contact and smile. And some of my clients can be so shy that they're even terrified to do that. And they take it as rejection if the guy doesn't approach them or doesn't respond. What would you say to that if a woman said that?
I would say that men, the number one blog on my site is 13 signs she's flirting. Men are constantly asking about what are the green light signs, what are the red light signs. And honestly, the green light signs that I give are she's smiling, she's making eye contact, she's paying attention to you, her body's facing towards you. So a lot of men, if you are interacting with them and you're not doing those things, sadly, he's going to think, oh, she's not interested. And this is not just me giving those tips. It is like the around the world tips and indicators of somebody who is interested in them. So for guys, you're like, I'm not going to make a bigger fool out of myself or buy this girl a drink if she's not interested in me. And the thing is that you don't have to be interested in your mind say, oh yeah, I want to go home and have sex with him, or I want to, marry this guy. But to show that you're engaged in the conversation and at least open to seeing where else the conversation can go, if you can smile, if you can make eye contact, or even with your words, if that's more comfortable. If you say, you know what, I'm really shy, but I'm enjoying the conversation. And then you can still look at the ground while you're saying it. And if you want to be really bold, if you can touch, that is like a clear sign that you want that guy sticking around.
Yeah.
Again, guys have the same insecurities, especially amazing amazing men. Like, I work with the most amazing men. I'm going to tell you a quick story.
Yeah.
When I was in New York a year and a half ago, and I was doing this seminar for men, it was like 50 men, and I was staying with my girlfriend. And like everybody always is like, oh, you're like working with like these big losers, blah, blah. So she said, I'll come pick you up at the end of the day. So she showed up a little bit early, and we were running late. So she walked in like looking all frumpy, not expecting to be interested in any of the guys. And she walked in and went, and then she walked out, went to the bathroom, came back 5 minutes later, her hair was done, her makeup was done, because honestly, these guys were hot. They are quality men who want to understand women so they can be good men for them. And they also want to have that little bit of an edge, and that's the part that's typically missing with them, because they don't want to become assholes. They don't want to become jerks. They don't want to become aggressive. But they don't know how to find that balance between the nice guy, which we label, and being a bad boy. So instead of being the bad boy, they choose to be the nice guy who just shows women how wonderful they'll be. And we all know we're not attracted to that,
right?
Sadly.
No, I agree. I completely agree. That's a funny story. So did she meet someone at your event?
She did, actually. So we ended up going out with 5 of the guys that night, and she ended up making out with them. Not them, sorry, one of them. I just made her sound like a huge whore. But yeah, all 5 of them. She was making out with them. She's really adventurous.
Oh.
But yeah, she ended up making out with one of them.
Well, your client must have been happy. He was successful that night.
And I was like, see, it worked. There you go. I didn't even pay her to do that, and it worked wonderfully.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That is so funny. So, ladies, you should probably go meet Marni after her events here in New York City.
That's where the men are. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's where you go, honestly. One place I would say to go find men it is singles mixers. That is the best place, because like online dating is wonderful, but it's very flat, because people, it's more superficial. You're just sort of, both sides are sort of evaluating on what they see in flat form, because you know your words can't pop out unless you're a really good writer. But in person, you have the opportunity to see little nuances about somebody, because even if they're saying words that maybe you're like, that wouldn't be so attractive to me, you can see their character, and vice versa. They get to interact with you. And New York is endless singles events. So that is the best place.
So now let me ask you a question, though, because, you know, sometimes when women go to singles events, there's that dead air in the room of, oh, my God, it's almost like you're at the high school dance and everyone's, like, scared to talk to each other. Well, they obviously need you there because you would get everybody talking. But what would you say, how could they overcome that and make it more comfortable?
Exactly. Well, number one, it is not your responsibility to fill an awkward silence. If you want to sit back and you own it and you're like, it's not my job to fill it, that's one way to handle it. But I understand that you want to keep conversation flowing so that people can see your personality, and vice versa, they can see who you are. So what I would actually suggest is, I have this exercise and it's called creating mission statements, but I actually think I need to make a new term for that. But it's basically just having 5 things in your life that you're working on, or that you have questions about, or you're trying to work through, or things that are happening within your own world that you open your mouth and you share. So for guys that I'm working with, like if they go to the mall, for example, I call it mission statements because they're on a mission to do something. Mm-hmm. So they'll walk into a store and they'll say, you know what, I'm trying to find this great shirt. It looks like this, 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 and this. And the mission statement, it's a mission because it can be built upon, because then they can elaborate and expand the story that they're sharing. Say, I went to this other store last week, and this is what happened. This girl told me this and that and that. Anyway, it's a way of having conversation in your back pocket. So if you can, before you go to a singles event, you can say, what are 5 things that are going on in my life right now that I can open up and share about, that aren't too personal? Like, I wouldn't want to talk about, you know, a stomach ailment that you had last week and you were sitting on the toilet for 4 hours. Like, probably not the best mixers conversation. But I would say, you know what, I'm really debating getting a dog right now, or a cat, if that's the statement. Or at work, you know, I have a situation at work right now, there's this girl there, and she's doing X, Y, and Z. But having that conversation prepared and ready to pull out of your back pocket if needed. And it's really just sharing what's interesting in your life and seeing what's interesting in other people's lives. And that's how you get to see who they are as other individuals, and also make everybody else more comfortable. Because if you can position yourself as the leader who's totally fine with conversation while everybody else is a shy little wallflower, you become the object of desire.
That's true. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a really great point. So let me ask you a question. So because you've worked with so many men and literally tens of thousands of men, what do they tell you are the top three things that prevent them from thinking of a woman as a long-term girl?
Ooh, that is a very good question. Okay, top three things. So for them, they talk about a lot of red flags, but a lot of men tend to ignore their red flags. So they're different. So for some guys, it's about whether she drinks too much, or for some guys, it's about maybe pressure that she puts on them because she may be a little bit older and wants to have children. So for a lot of guys, if they're on a date and all of these emotional insecurities come up in the first couple of dates, either they're going to go into like fixer mode and try and help that girl, which is great and wonderful, and it shows you a wonderful side of a man and whether or not he can deal with the stuff that you're putting out there. But for a lot of really good quality guys who really value themselves, they are going to see that as a red flag. And I don't want to position this in that women are like, well, I want to get my point across really quickly that I am on the lookout for a husband because my clock is ticking. But I don't want to say stop sharing that with somebody, but there is a less anxious and less emotional way to position that to men. Because really good quality men, sadly, aren't going to respond to your emotions. It's going to be very off-putting for them. And if you do get into a place where you are already, putting them on the defense or kind of being accusatory, then that's not going to work for them. Men just in the beginning, they want to have fun. The same thing as you. They want it to be light. They want to have fun, and they want to have good, solid conversations. And if in those, rational conversations, you are talking about, these past guys that I did date, it was off-putting for them that I was 34 and I was ready for a child. But and you can position it as, but I understand that.
Right.
That's where they're coming from. I'm not saying I want to have a baby tomorrow, but it is something that's in my future and something that is a top priority for me. Obviously, I want to find the right person to be with. That's a nicer way to handle that conversation rather than like, yeah, these assholes before couldn't handle me wanting having a baby. All these like men who are really afraid, and it's just they're two different angles. One's emotionally charged and one is not. It's just a rational person having a conversation about who they are and where they are and seeing whether or not the other person matches.
Do your clients tell you that a lot of women are kind of say those things about men, like about bad past experiences and really like bash men?
For sure. So a lot of men talk about the first dates where, women basically unleash their list on them but it's like, how do they talk about it? They'll say it's as if she came to the date ready to already hate me. And
wow.
Yeah, and I don't think any of the women who are watching this are like that at all. And you're like an amazing coach, I know that, and I'm sure you have wonderful women. But sometimes our emotions can get the best of us, and if we've had a round of 5 dates, that 6th guy gets fucked because he has to hear about it. And for the really good men, it does become off-putting because number one, they're like, how do I help her? And then how do I prove to her that all men aren't like this? So it already has an imbalance in the date, and it's taking the fun away from it, and it starts off on a negative note.
Right. No, and I completely agree. But I also think that women may not do it consciously, but sometimes they can block themselves because they go in with the bad attitude of, I've been out on 5 or 10 dates and none of the guys have worked out, so how's this one going to be different? So I think it's really important for women to go in with the right attitude, because if you don't, men pick up on it. And sometimes I even tell people, if you're having that feeling, sometimes it's good to just take a break. And just, look inward and work on yourself. So I think that's really good, too.
So if you go on 5 dates, yeah, you're right. Like, take a couple of weeks off and just be like, okay, well, I know the next one's going to get an earful from me if I don't, take a little break and have some me time and then go back to dating. But I did want to tell you one story about my sister-in-law.
Okay.
So I think I've told you this before, but my sister-in-law is newly divorced, and she just started dating again, and she's like super awesome and chatty and talkative and like an amazing girl. So she's going to attract amazing men. So 2 of her friends wanted to set her up with this guy who she eventually met as a group, and she was like, oh, he's great. He like can have conversation. He's wonderful. I want to go on a date with him. So she went on a date with him, and she called me from the bathroom, and she's like, Marni, I don't know what to do. He just keeps talking and talking and talking and isn't asking me any questions. But when we met, he did. He was totally wonderful. How do I get him to ask me a question? And like, what do I do? And I told her, I'm like, he's probably nervous, because a lot of guys are told if there's a lull in the conversation or if there's a silence, like that's going to ruin the date and mean chemistry, whatever it is that they're taught. So I was like, go back to the table. I told this at your event.
Yeah,
I said this.
I remember.
Go back to the table and put your hand on his hand and look him in the eyes and just smile for a second. You don't even have to say anything. And that will instantly get him to relax, because he's like, okay, she's in this date as well. So I think for either men or women, it's really great to acknowledge that there is somebody else in this situation with you. And I understand that you have to protect yourself first, but understand that there is another person at the table. They are going to bring their own insecurities. They may have had 5 bad dates, before going out with you. So the whole point is to have fun. Dating should be fun. And yes, it's draining and it can be upsetting because you don't take it to where you want to, but each time you get to go out with an interesting person, find out about them, and if it doesn't work out, like, just go for drinks and then get the hell out of there. Yeah. And then you have a great story to tell afterwards to your next date.
Right.
About this weird guy who had a foot fetish and took his shoes off in the middle of it. Like, whatever it is, you have an interesting story to share.
No, I completely agree. I think some people go into first dates a little too serious, and you just got to go in with the attitude of just going to go have fun, because you never know what can happen. So you might be surprised too.
Exactly.
So now I'm going to ask you one last question. What is your best dating tip for women? Because you've worked with so many men, you must have one tip that sticks out.
For sure. My best dating tip for women is stop thinking that men are women. Because they're not.
Well, thank God.
Exactly. I know. If you want to date women, go be a lesbian.
Right.
I'm sure it seems fun. It seems fantastic. You move in after 3 dates. It's amazing. But if you like men and you know that you're into that, stop thinking that men are women. They don't think the same way that you do. They do not act the same way you do. They do not do things how you do things. So when you say, well, if he really liked me, he would do this. It doesn't work that way. Because that's how women work. That is not how men think. Men think very logically and rationally. And if you say to them, don't call me, they're not going to call you.
I think that's so funny, because women say all the time, well, he should have got what I was really trying to say. No, men take things literally. Whatever you say, he thinks that's what you mean.
Oh, they are so confused by it. Because we'll say 10 things in an argument to kind of protect ourselves and be subtle. But they'll really listen to those 10 things and just be like, what? But you said this a second ago, and I don't understand what you're doing. Remember, they are made to go out to battle. They are made to receive instructions on how to survive in the wilderness. So if you're telling them, ooh, don't go to that area, but you really mean go to that area and find me the berries that may be kind of dangerous, you're already getting confused by what I say. Don't give them those instructions. Tell them what you want, as uncomfortable as it may be. They appreciate it more. And it makes for a better relationship and wonderful communication.
Right. Because then he goes, oh, that's what she wanted. It's not, oh, let me read into what she really means underneath that whole sentence and everything.
Exactly. If men were mind readers, oh my God, they would be horrified by the things that go on in our minds. They're not mind readers. They're wonderful creatures who are built to work how they work. And when we expect them to work a different way, we're screwing ourselves.
Exactly. So. Good point. That's a great tip. So now, how can the women find you? Where are you located on your site? What's your site?
Oh, winggirlmethod.com. And actually, I just started writing newsletters for women. So it's tons of free advice for women as well. And I do a lot of interviews with other amazing male experts. Because I really believe that having the, not opposing point of view, but the opposite gender providing advice, it gives you that 5% of what you don't typically get. So I love all the women who coach women, and I love all the men who coach men, but I think that you also need that balance of hearing what the other side really wants. So I have a lot of amazing males who are on my newsletter series that give you information to add on to what I also provide.
Right. Okay, great. Well, thanks everybody for joining us on the Single and Stilettos show, which is a weekly show. And if you would like to get our free report on what attracts man and what turns them off, you can go to singleandstilettos.com or you can click right here.